Hello students. So all the aspirants of CSC 2024, you know that hardly 1 month is left. Somewhere around 16 June you have the paper, and now this is the best time to actually address the reading comprehension section, where everybody can score good marks. Considering the unprecedented nature of mathematics last year, this year you must bank upon reading comprehension and should not take chances. One reason for this is that reading comprehension is a section that you are aware of, you have done it during your schooling. And second thing is that their reading comprehension section has not been very difficult. If you take analyze the papers starting from 2011 to 2023, it was not very difficult. There was always a mixed bag type of questions. I mean, the difficulty level was that some questions were of average nature, some were easy, and the majority of the questions were easy and average kind. However, every year there have been 3 4 questions which are confusing and which can be called as difficult. So these are the two prominent reasons that that's why you should bank upon RC and should work on this. So reading comprehension section in today's class, I will take you through the details of this particular paper, the type of questions, and what kind of reading is required, how to evaluate and eliminate the options. Right. My but before that, my name is Shakeel Ahmed, and I have been teaching RC section for a very long time, and in today's class we will unravel those knots that are going to make the thing easy for you. So a reading comprehension section, one thing, it depends on your language part. You must be good at the language. If you are attempting in English or Hindi, you must know the language well. Second thing, it depends on your analysis ability. So the passage talks about something, and in that given context you must be able to apply the reasoning to comprehend the unsaid or implicit information. So guys, for that you must know that reading comprehension section can be done if you work on 3 different dimensions, 3 different aspects. Number one, this is the passage. So when it comes to reading the passage, your reading must be effective, right? Second part is the question, and the third part is the options. Now this passage is obviously written by an author, and UPSC has taken it from different sources, from the books, from some standard books, or some reports, or some other articles. They have their own resources. Then the examiner composes a particular type of question, and to evaluate your level of comprehension, right, your LOC, level of comprehension, and the options are written where you know that only one option is the best answer to the given question, and the rest of the 3 options are not the correct answer. However, they are written in such a manner that they confuse you. So this is the whole game, this is the whole challenge. Let's gradually go into the details of these. So we have 2 days classes, today and tomorrow, to discuss the nitty-gritty of RC section and to give your preparation a boost at this last moment. So in today's class I will discuss your doubts related to RC section. There are 2 types of doubts. Number one, that some students have doubts in terms of their approach, approach based. For example, some students keep asking and they get confused whether they should attempt the RC section first. In the RC section, how many questions should be attempted, or should they solve entire RC section at one go, or should they go for maths and reasoning in between and then come back to RC? How much time should be given to RC section? How much time should be given to each question? What kind of questions should be left what kind of questions should be attempted. So all these things are related to your approach, time and speed and the section at a time. And second type of doubts are related to concepts. So the concepts based doubts. Concept based doubts are those, for example, related to particular question. You are not clear that what kind of information it requires as an answer. Related to the reading part, some kind of refinement, some kind of boost you need there. Some concept clarity about the options you need. When it comes to evaluate the options, you must know the traits or characteristics of the wrong options. You must at the same time know the traits or the characteristic of the correct answer for the given question. So these are the concepts based. So concepts based, subject oriented, approach based. In terms of the paper, how will you go about it, right? So these doubts we will discuss in today's class. Approach based doubts I will address in tomorrow's class, because first and foremost thing, the basic thing is to be clear about the concept. So number one, the concepts based doubts we will take up, right? These doubts I will take in tomorrow's class. In today's class, today's class, I will take you through the concepts, plus we will solve some questions which will help you to understand the concepts in a better way. In tomorrow's class, we will discuss the previous year's questions, right? So this is the plan. Let me now take you to the basics of concepts based doubts. So again, the three dimensions of your RC section: passage, reading, the question, and the options and evaluation. So the first thing is that when you are reading, each student must focus when you start reading, and your objective should be to find out what the author wants to convey. Remember this line. So guys, when you are reading the passage, your sole purpose is to notice what does the author want to convey, right? Whatever he wants to convey, he may write at the very beginning, he may write maybe somewhere in the middle, he may write it at the very end. There is no fixed place of the main point that he wants to convey to the readers, right? So this is the first thing, that if it is written in the passage, you should never miss out. Here, there are two ways in which the authors write what they want to convey. Some authors write it very explicitly, openly at the very outset of the passage, maybe at the very beginning, or maybe at the very end. The whole argument is given and then it culminates into, at the very end, he writes the main point that he wants to establish. So some authors have this style, which we can say that they write their point, what they want to convey, in an explicit or in a direct manner. राइट सीधे अपनी बात को लिख देते हैं. अब वो कहीं पे भी हो सकती है, एट द वेरी बिगनिंग, इन द मिडल और एट द एंड, बट इट इज गिवन देयर. So any aspirant should be able to notice that. Yeah, that's a basic thing because it is easier as it is given. But the second part is that some authors do not follow this style and they do not write what they want to convey in an explicit manner. Rather, they write it in an implicit manner, indirect way. अब यहाँ पर challenge आता है. The students face the challenge that to find out the implicit information, implicit point, implicit manner. And here we call that in an implicit manner when they write, or in indirect manner, we generally call it what does the author implied. The question is that what is the implied idea of the passage? What is the implied idea of the author? So here implied is that without saying directly, the author has what it tends to say, right? What it tends to say is given there, and of course your comprehension skill is evaluated more for the second part. The first part is given there. So this is about the basic thing of when you start reading the passage. Coming to the second part, the question. So whenever you are reading the questions, you must remember that the questions are the remote control. From there you are being controlled. On one hand, you have read the author, Now you have to find out the specific information that the question requires as an answer from the given option arrangement. So you know very well, I give you a simple example. So if the question is what, the question is asking you to find the answer for why, you know that the answer to how may also be written in the passage, however it will not work as an answer to this question. And vice versa. So it means that though the information related to some option is given in the passage, however that option cannot be chosen, cannot be selected solely on this basis, because if it does not serve as an answer to the given question, it means from in the evaluation of the options you have to keep in mind that what does the question require, whether the chosen option gives the answer to the given question or not, right? So that I will repeat in when I go for options. Let me now talk about that what kind of questions UPSC asks very quickly. So UPSC generally asks, if I can divide for the ease of learning in two types of questions. They they ask crux type of questions, crux type, or which we call as main idea of the author. So you need to find out what the author wants to convey and how he has written the passage. So this type of questions, there are various terminology used to ask this crux type or main idea based question. And then there are second type of questions which are logic based, right? So here you need to apply your analytical skill to find out what which other option is correct. Like if the whole passage is correct, then which other option can be deduced from it, can be corrected. But here in the first one, you have to strictly limit yourself to what the author is saying. You are not supposed to apply your own deductions, your own analytical skill to arrive at. This skill will only be used to identify what the author is trying to convey by and large. But here it is just logic based. If the given information is correct, the whole passage as an information, as a piece of information, or some part of the passage as a piece of information, then which other option is also correct. Alright guys, so let me tell you how they ask the crux type or main idea based question, the variety. Every student should be aware of the different terminology used by the examiner to ask crux type of question. So they ask, I have written two words here, they directly write crux or main idea. So I am writing from number 3, these two are already written. Sometimes instead of these words they say that find out what is the crucial or what is the critical message. So message is the important point. Number 4, they may ask you that which of the following option best sums up the passage, or they write encapsulate the passage. Encapsulate the passage. They may write that which of the following option contains the gist of the passage or essence of the passage, right? So all these 1, 2, crux type, main idea, key idea, central idea, whichever word they use, it means the main point of the author. The message, sums up or encapsulate, gist or essence, all means the same, that you need to find out what the author wants to by and large convey through his passage. If the whole passage is like orange, then the answer should be like juice. The juice is that the main component of orange. Here you need to find that your answer should not contain the pulp or the seed or the peel. I mean, though they are part of the orange, however we need the main component of the orange here. So that thing you need to keep on mind when you are choosing the answer for this particular type of question. When you go for logic based questions, UPSC asks a variety of questions which are logic based. So I am writing it on the next page. Logic based. They ask, find out the logical assumption, or inference, or they may write, find out the logical corollary, So corollary is the main word. They may ask, find out the logical conclusion that you can draw from the passage, or you know, or a deduction that you can make from the passage. They may also ask that which option, you know, gives you the implication of the passage. However, implication could also be connected to the main idea, because it means conclusion or meaning. So conclusion and meaning are used in the main idea as well. Number 6, they may ask you that which of the following, like in 2015 they asked one question, that which of the option is weakening the author's argument. The weakening argument has been asked once, so I'm writing, right? And so mostly the UPSC has asked number 1 to number 4, number 5 as well, number 1 to number 5. However, once they asked this kind of question in 2015, and if though they have never asked the question number 7 that I'm going to write, but if tomorrow they ask, you must know, similarly strengthening argument questions may be asked, right? In other exams it is asked. So here UPSC may also ask a parallel reasoning based option. Yeah, so etc, these are the logical questions family, where you need to focus on 1, 2 and 3 and 4. Number 5 has been asked once or twice. So when you prepare for logical questions, these are the terminology you must be aware of. Variety of questions, crux or main idea based questions, these are the terminology, right? So you understood the questions. So the passage, the first thing, what does the author want to convey? Always focus on that. It is written explicitly or written implicitly. In both ways you need to find. Implicitly, if it is written, implied idea based question will be asked, and when logical questions are asked, I have given you the variety. Let's come back to go back to the third dimension of your preparation. This third part is the options. So here in the options, what you need to do, aspirants, remember that options are written in such a manner that they trap you. Something wrong is written in a wrong option, but this wrong is written, and UPSC is a master of this genre, so they write it in such a manner that you find it very appealing, very alluring, and so they trap you through that. So be careful and while choosing the options. So two things I will let you know. Two basic things, though there are other details related to the options as well, but two main points. Number one, whenever you choose an option, always cross check whether the chosen option is the answer to the given question or not, right? I tell you why it happens. And sometimes it happens that after reading the question in a jiffy, when you go to the options, you have read something, and that thing is also mentioned in the passage. So there, because of this matching thing, you don't think twice, and you just choose that option because somewhere you have read it, so it's imprinted already. Later on you realize that this chosen option, though it was given, however it was not the answer. So this thing, to avoid this thing, always focus on this condition number 1, point number 1, and that is, I write so that you remember it, whether the chosen option is the answer to the given question or not. Always cross check this thing. This first condition is very important, whether the chosen option is the answer to the given question or not, right? This is the first thing. So it means if the question demands you to find out a valid assumption, you have to be careful whether you are choosing an assumption or you are choosing an answer for main idea. If the vice versa, if the question is main idea based, then you are not supposed to choose the answer of an inference or of an assumption, because here the examiner wants that the main point of the passage should be present in the option. So number one you have done. So you know, and now second point is, you see that each option written here before the second option, the mental conditioning should be that each option written here is in fact a claim or it's an assertion. You know, you all know claim, right? So it's a claim, and you have to certify whether this claim is the right answer to the given question according to number one, and according to number two you have to also cross check whether the given chosen option, whether the chosen option or the claim for that sufficient data is given in the passage or not. So it means data evaluation UPSC is very particular about. They write some kind of options for which the examiner has gone a little over the top. Some extreme notions, some kind of exaggeration, discrepancies are created, यानी change कर देता है point को इधर से उधर, ठीक है? So very good afternoon students. Yeah, I got good. So second point, whether the claim made by the chosen option is backed by the given data. This given data means in the passage or not. So you have to again cross check whether sufficient data is there in the passage or not. If you just focus on these two components, you just believe me that 50% of your errors can be eliminated easily. क्योंकि आपका mental conditioning हो गया कि ये दो तरह का मुझे चेक करके रखना है, always the answer. So accountability will be set. Chosen option is the answer or not. Second, whatever the option is saying, do we have complete and sufficient data present in the passage or not? So these 2 points, I hope everybody remembers. These are part of the basic things that we discussed during our regular classes also. However, students commit errors in basic only. So that's the reason it's a kind of a revision for that. Now, the logical questions, main idea based question, and these two claims on the basis of which you will choose your answer. I'm going to show you now we will take one by one the questions and their your answer for that. So I'm going to show you a CSAT question asked in this regard, and here is a question number 14 on your screen. It's not a very serious thought oriented type of passage. I have selected this question because of its very easy to understand, and there is no contemplation over here, though I will take you to serious passages as well. But to start with, whether we have sufficient data or not, I am starting with question number 12. So let's solve it. I don't remember the year. I think it was in 2017 or 18. This passage was this statement was given. RC questions are sometimes given in form of passage, and sometimes some statements are also given where logical questions are asked. So here the question is this: 12 people form a club. By picking lots, one of them will host a dinner for all once in a month. The number of dinners a particular member has to host in 1 year is, and you have to find out that number. Now, the quantifiers need to be noticed. So here 12 people are there, and how they are elected to host a dinner? By picking lots. This is the method. By picking lots, वो जो पर्चियों पे नाम रख करके डालते हैं, no other piece of information is given, just by picking lots. One of them will host a dinner for all once in a month. whose name has come up. Of the number of dinners a particular member has host in 1 year, now when a student look at 12 people, right, the number, when he looks at 12 months, 1 year means 12 months, in a hurry, he thinks that 12 members are there and 12 months are there in 1 year. So how many number of dinners a particular member will host? He forgets about the in-between details that he requires. He jumps to option A and goes for 1, because 12 and 12. So 12 by 12 is 1. But you see, the key information is here: by picking lots, and no other detail is given. So by picking lots, it is not even given that if one person's name has comes once, he will not be asked to participate in this picking lots for second time. No other piece of information is given. So it means there is no fixed thing here, because it depends on chance that whose name come. His name may come twice, his name may comes never. So all existing possibilities you need to consider, and hence your answer should be D, cannot be predicted. What you have done here, the option that you have chosen here is a logical question, right? And this is what kind of question? This is a question where you need to infer something. It's an inference that you have made here, right? So an inference is what? From this simple thing you have noticed that inference means that you need to find out that if this information given here, which is right, because we will never question the author's assertions, author's argument. If that is right, then which other option should also be correct? It means inference will be a claim, and for this claim you need to have the sufficient data in the passage, plus you need to have evaluate whether it is logically correct or not. Does it make sense? So here 1 is wrong and 0 is wrong, 3 is wrong, because you don't have enough sufficient data. Cannot be predicted is the correct statement, right? So when you go for logical questions, I will start with simple passages where you need not to think much. After that, I will give you some serious passages based on inference, based on other logical questions. So in today's class, guys, the type of question I have started with, I will continue with that. This side, logical questions, assumption, inference, logical corollary, conclusion, these questions. So I'll give you some more details about inference. Let me first give you one more question. Again, simple to comprehend, no contemplation, the passage is not thoughtful. Right, I suppose it's visible. 3 statements are given here, and you need to find out the conclusion. Here the conclusion means that which other option is also correct if the given information is correct, right? So go for this one. Yes. So dear, I'm just taking care of the concepts. So here, quantifiers you need to focus at. Quantifiers means those words that give you the idea of the amount. Similarly, those words that give you the sense of number, sense of frequency, always focus on them. So here all X brand cars parked here are white. It means if there is any X brand cars parked there, it must be white. Some of them have radial tires. Some of X brand cars have radial tires. Then all X brand cars manufactured after 1986 have radial tires. All X brand cars, but it does not talk about any other brand. After 86 have radial tires. Fine, another specific information. Then all cars are not X brand, right? So all cars are not X brand, that's given here. All X brand cars parked here are white. It means there could be other brand cars parked there. That's also a possibility, because it's not saying ki only X brand cars are there. So before you take the answer, you have seen here that only and some and all and these kind of words you need to pay attention to. So for all the logical questions, for all the logic based questions, you need to pay attention to certain keywords along with those two conditions, whether it's the answer to the question plus whether sufficient data is given or not. So to understand the sufficient data, you need to pay attention to the keywords. And what are those keywords? So always look for those quantifiers, words like all, words like only, some, most, not all, never, always, right? These type of words will give you the clue. Examiners use these words to make the option correct or incorrect. Fine. And just to highlight this point, all whenever is given, it means that author is talking about everything has been included. So 100%, right? Similarly, if always is given in terms of frequency, it presents the sense of 100%. 100% here, right? Similarly, if each and every is given, again nothing is left out, it means 100%. So such words that give you the idea of 100% ki everything has been included should be noticed in the options. Similarly, if I ask you to think of other words that give you the idea of 100%, words like complete or completely, word is entire, the word is absolute, right? In terms of freedom and all, if absolute freedom is given, absolute gives a sense of 100%. And on the opposite, on the contrary side, we have 0%, which means nothing, none. So should also notice those things. For example, the words like never, right? Words like nothing, none, these words. Or any other word of the same value, of the same nature. Though they are highlighters, they are the indicators, you must never miss them. Then we have some words which come in between. Yani these two types of words either sitting on 0% side or on 100% side. For data evaluation, they play a very important role. And then we have some in between things. In between things where the author again can make some discrepancies, some exaggerations he can make. कुछ बदलाव कर देगा. ठीक है, जैसे word है only. अब एक इसका synonym है solely. So we have to be careful of only and solely. The word is some. For frequency, there is a word often. So what should you do? How should you analyze these words? For data interpretation, this is very important, right? So I will take you to this page, and word like only or solely, some, often, most, not all. They are not giving you the sense of 0% nor 100%. So what do they mean? Mathematical value, how can we attach with that? If the author has given that there is only one, the only solution to this problem is, it means he talks about just one solution, right? So, or if he says the only way to go ahead is this, he writes that way. So it means there's just one way, right? And you cannot differ from that. Some means that we does not have any fixed value, but you know that it cannot be equal to 0. So sums, the second, the next mathematical value could be 1, 2, 3, 4, any. There's no fixed upper limit here. So in case, in the passage, if the author has described some case, let's say he has given one case, let's say he has given one incident, and in the correct option you notice the word some is written, that means it's acceptable, because for some you are sure that it cannot be equal to 0. There must be something, कुछ तो होगा तभी ये sum use किया गया है. तो sum की minimum value यहाँ से भी हो सकती है start, and that's the reason that when you solve the questions, uh, and I give you the example of a CSAT passage. In one of the CSAT passage, author was talking about the flamingos, the birds, and it describes the social traits of flamingos in the passage. Ask a logical question, find out the inference, and one option was that in some birds we have this kind of social characteristics, which was given about flamingos. That social traits characteristics were mentioned there, and it was written in some bird species we have this. That was absolutely correct. The other options were saying all birds have this. These are the same social traits. Another option was saying none of the birds, yeah, only bird species have this kind. So these options make these words make the option incorrect. So some you have understood. Similarly, if often is given, often talks about the frequency, always, often, and sometimes, and very often or seldom. So you need to understand its value again. If often is given, again it's not equal to 0, right? So its value could again be can again start from same way, 1, 2, 3. There's no fixed value, so you can take start from there. So if a particular incident occurrence is given in the para, and one of the options says ki often it happens, that thing is mentioned, the context is mentioned, and in that sense often is used, it means acceptable because at least one case is given there. Sometimes they use this word most, and the whole thing is written like, if the passage says now India has, let's say simple example, India has more soldiers than most of the other countries, right? So this most of the countries, it means that the number of soldier in India should be more than at least 50% of the countries, of the other countries, the soldier of other countries. So most is used in that sense and should be understood in that particular context. Okay, it gives the sense of more than 50%. And from there you can evaluate and see the data sufficiency there. Okay, about not all. Next word, not all, you know that it is saying not all, it means you are sure that it cannot be equal to 100%. And from there you can start the evaluation. Alright guys, so when you go for data evaluation, have to be careful of these words. I take you to the given question. Now you evaluate the given question, choose the correct option. Question number 16, a CSAT question. So I'll be waiting for your answer. You should go for elimination. Notice the wrong claims. They generally have some noticeable words. I have already told you some indicators. All right, so I'm sure you must have gone halfway. Let's take one option at a time. First option A says only white cars are parked here. Information is in the first statement. It says all X brand cars parked here are white. So all X brand cars parked here are white does not mean that other brand cars are not parked there. So there is a possibility that maybe Y brand cars or maybe Z brand cars are also parked there. The sentence does not rule out that. And about their color, nothing is given. It's only given white is the color of all X brand cars. So from there, you can't draw this inference that only white cars are parked here. So only is makes it incorrect. Option A cannot be the answer. Similarly, the other noticeable word. So when you get the answer options, you just look at first the visible words. Any two weak options only makes it incorrect. Similarly, D, most of the X brand cars are manufactured before 1986. I have just told you the interpretation of most of, right? When most is given in that sense, it should be more than 50%. Do you have that specific data here? That most of the X brand cars are manufactured before 86. Information is given in third statement. So here it says all X brand cars manufactured after 1986 have radial tires. Right, so it is giving about the radial tires after 1986. They all have radial tires. Before that, they, it is not given that they had radial tires. So saying most of the X brand cars are manufactured before 1986, it means more than 50% must have been manufactured. But there is no relevant, there is no information, there is no data for this. So D is weak option, A is weak option. And you notice them because of most, because of only. Just the presence of only and most does not mean that they are wrong. You have to evaluate it. However, the chances are you will be notice that they are wrong because of the extreme or because of the exaggerated value they represent. So let's go to C, B and C. Some white X brand cars with radial tires are parked here. And C, cars other than X brand cars cannot have radial tires. They cannot have radial tires. Again, it has gone for a kind of extreme claim. It is given that some of them have radial tires, some of them, but it's silent on other brand cars. So cars other than X cannot have radial tires. We don't have the data. It means we are left with option B. So when you solve logical question, always look at the data sufficiency, and that is that is a point in general for all type of logical questions. You have to look at the data given. These are the regular questions asked. Now students must know what does a particular question demand. So it means that they need to be clear about the demand of these questions. They must know the nuanced information required by sort by these questions. तो उसके ऊपर थोड़ा सा डिस्कस कर लेते हैं. I gave you in general a sense, an idea about the logical questions, ki how the data should be evaluated, just to convey the 2 points I mentioned earlier, that when it comes to option evaluation, we should always focus on, let me just show you that point, that when you choose an option, you should be careful that the chosen option is the answer to the given question, and does it contain the sufficient data or not, this particular point. Right, through the example I have shown you that whether the chosen option is the answer to the given question or not. We have not come across this kind of example, just two questions we solved. And uh, second point, I have shown you through the two examples whether the claim made by the chosen option is backed by the given data in the passage or not, sufficient data is there or not. So the two questions were just to give you the notion, this particular idea. Let me now take you to these logical questions. While writing the CSAT paper, aspirants in a hurry, when they look at these questions, back-to-back passages are there. Some 7, 8 or 6, 7, 4, 5 passages are given at one place, the chunk of the passage. So there, when they look at the question, if they do not know the basic requirement by a particular question, they start mixing the things, and hence they get confused. And I'm sure that some of you who have gone through the practice might have faced this challenge that more than one option seems to be correct answer. This is a very common doubt. Maybe none of the option is making sense. But all these points, for all these problems, all these problems may have one reason, and that reason is that maybe you do not know the difference between different types of questions. So the clarity about the question, that what kind of information it requires, you need to understand, and I am going to give you an idea on that. So this concept must be clear. Logical questions, LQs, and the kind of specific information they need or they seek in the answer. Specific information they require, and there one should be. That's the reason it becomes very pertinent to discuss the type of questions and their the information there. But I'm talking about logical questions. So I cite an example where I will try to show you the different type of information demanded by different questions. Let's say you are reading a passage. I'm using this example which I feel is very effective in terms of comprehending the concepts. You see, if you are reading this passage, suppose it's a research paper written by a scientist. So the scientist has written all the details of his research and then final finding. So he says that A led to B in his experiment, and then B causes C, and then he writes other details. At the end, he proves his final finding, and his final finding is written as all, and I would write an indicator, hence, because he is trying to prove, hence all liquids have a freezing point. Right. So kind of research paper, the author has written his points where some of the steps, maybe secondary pieces of information are given, and then it finally culminates into the final finding, the main point. So this point, the last point, hence all liquids have a freezing point, this he has proven on the basis of the whole paper, right, on the basis of the whole write-up. So what do we call it? This piece of information is called conclusion. This is the conclusion the author has arrived at. has proven. So conclusion is the main point that the author proves, right? Or it is the main claim made on the basis of whole para, whole article. This is the conclusion, right? He has proven that. When you look at this step, so the conclusion is clear. It's final claim. It's the main point. It is the final summation based on the basis of the whole article, whole para. But when you look at this part, A leads to B and B leads to C. From here, you can make your own mental, your own logical deduction. And this deduction is that A plays some role in causing C. Because A leads to B and then B leads to C, it means A leads to C. Yeah, A plays some role in causing C in whatever way it is written. This thing you have done, it is not being proven by the author. It is not written as the main claim on the basis of the whole para. Rather, it is a kind of secondary or peripheral in pieces of information written here. But what you have done here, to arrive at this piece of information, you have applied your own reasoning. So whenever you apply your own logic and reasoning by using the given data, we call it inference. Right? So conclusion is the main point or main claim made on the basis of the whole. The author tries to prove that, establish that. Inference is something that as a reader, when you make a logical deduction. So I think I should take you for inference. I will write it on the other page. It's in brief the information. For those students who do not know the basics, it's very helpful. So inference is a logical deduction. It means a logical deduction or a logical conclusion that a reader makes or draws from the given para on the basis of data given. Given para means data given. It means does not mean the whole para, maybe some part of the para. So the data given, and by applying his own logic and reasoning. Up now, it's not a new thing for any of you. You have been making inferences. Like in fact, all the time you make your inferences on the basis of the incidents that happen in the kind of inputs that you get, the data that you have, the facts that you come across. You make some kind of logical deduction to arrive at some new piece of information, some kind of logical conclusion. So inference is a logical deduction that a reader makes or draws from the given para on the basis of the data given and by applying his own logic and reasoning. So the two important point is that the given data and the logic and reasoning. Now obviously we cannot solve many questions in these 2 days. However, the purpose of the class, I relate it with it, is to actually give you kind of push. So the students who do not have the clarity need to understand that when they choose the option, the data should be given in the passage, sufficient data, and it should be logically correct deduction, logically correct claim. Remember the question you solve here? All X brand cars parked here are white, and from that you can't make this inference, can't make this logical conclusion. Only white cars parked here because it's not given, right? So on that basis you reach that option. The first question that we solve, a simple question, was this: 12 people form a club, by picking lots, right? And in you have to find out that how many dinner a person may organize, may host in 1 year, but the data was not sufficient. So you have to apply your logic. Always the inference leads you to a piece of information, and that information must be logically correct. Up here, the important point I have underlined, is that clear? Let me take you to back to this. Okay, here's one doubt. uh, I'll take your doubt, right? But you have to wait for a minute, right, Bhuvi? So we'll take it after a while. This is clear. So from the given example, it's clear that what an inference is: logical deduction. This inference is not necessarily based on the main point. It may be based on any point. So I have made just here one inference. And similarly, while reading the whole thing, this whole article, this whole write-up, or maybe a whole passage, the reader keeps making different inferences. So when the question of inference is asked, you are sure that either it must have the data in the passage, somewhere in the passage, and then correct logic and reasoning based it would be, right? So the two things are clear. Now I'm going to make another inference, but this inference is based on this particular point. The main point proven by the author, or the conclusion, or the theory of the author, whatever you call it, is hence all liquids have a freezing point. And from here we make a deduction, just like previous one, like inference. We make a deduction that is water can be frozen. This is again a logical deduction, and this is correct deduction. The sufficient data is here because all liquids have a freezing point, and we know water is a liquid. So obviously our reader's deduction is again water can be frozen, which seems to be based on this main point, proven point, and it is logically correct. So what is the difference between what this the previous thing that we solve here? A leads to B and B leads to C. It means A plays some role in leading to C or causing C. That was called an inference. Similarly, we have made another inference, but this inference, which is based on the proven point of the article, is called corollary, right? So when the examiner asks you corollary, it means you are again going to find out an inference. However, this inference is a special type of inference which should be based on the proven point, on the main point that author is trying to establish, trying to prove in the passage. So, 3 ho gaya questions. I have explained conclusion, the main point that author tries to establish on the basis of whole. Second, inference, the deduction that you make. And number 3, corollary, which is nothing else but a type of inference only. And this is a special inference. So corollary, I'll write some detail about corollary, is on this page. Number 3, corollary. Corollary is it's an inference made based on the main or the proven point. So corollary is in fact dictionary meaning of corollary is that it's a consequence, it's a logical consequence. Or logical consequence based on the point proven. So corollary is a type of inference. An inference could be any logical deduction. However, a corollary is like based on the main point. I have drawn here two circles. If I ask you to put them in the right perspective, which one is in inference and which other and which one is a corollary? So obviously the outer one will be an inference and the inner one will be a corollary, because corollary is a type of subset of inference only. It's a special type of inference. An inference could be based on any other point, any logical deduction based on these points like these dots. But when we have the point inference based on the main proven point, we can call it corollary. All right, so three questions I have discussed with you, and I suppose that relevant, you have understood the nuances, the nitty-gritty and the close differences among them, right? So 1, 2, 3, conclusion, inference and corollary. Sometimes the examiner writes an inference in another form and they write find out the logical conclusion, which means nothing else but an inference. So guys, now I take you to another type of question. That is an assumption. What is an assumption? Number 4. So before that, you need to understand that when I use this example, this visible, and I suppose that it helps a lot in terms of giving out the message, driving home the point. So if this firm line represents the passage, the author, what he has said in the passage, then based on this whole point, look at the arrow, whatever logical deductions you make, we call them inference, we call them corollary. Or sometimes logical conclusion is written, and the word conclusion is also used, so we can say conclusion, right? This is based on the author's given information. However, whatever the author has said, what he has proven, his theory, his idea, his point, while making those points and ideas, he has assumed something. So the arrow shows that his own point or thought or ideas are based on some suppositions, and we call those suppositions as assumption. So assumption is again like inference and corollary, it's not written in the passage, but the author has assumed them to be true. So it is the author's supposition. Yes, the author's supposition. And you understand why the assumption questions are regularly asked in CSAT paper. One reason is that when the author writes that small para, obviously in that small para he may not write all the entire or the all aspects of his idea. So some aspects of the ideas are written there and some he has already supposed. So while making some points, he has assumed something which is not clearly written there. But from the given expression, a reader can find out, can always understand what the author must have assumed. So it is already part of the author's thought. It means reader is going to make a discovery. If I use the metaphor for them, or I put it on hold for time being, because let me just so the author's supposition, you have understood that author believes in that part, he has taken that to be correct, and so he makes an assumption, right? So the assumptions are the author's supposition, the author's belief, the author whatever he has taken for granted, and on the basis of that he has made some point. Very simple example I use. If it is given that student, author has written that student X is an IS aspirant, and then he draws a conclusion. So he must be hardworking. Why he must be hardworking? Because he is an IS aspirant. अब you see that author has gone to his conclusion. The conclusion indicator is so here. So he has gone to his conclusion on the basis of this fact that student X is an IS aspirant. So being an IS aspirant, he must be hardworking. It means what the author has jumped to, what his assumption is, that all IS aspirants, and this author's conclusion is dependent on this, that all IS aspirants are hardworking. But this is not written in the para, however assumed by the author. So assumption has this nature that it will represent the thing that is not said openly, but it has been assumed, and so the author's argument depends on it. If the assumption is not correct, then of course the whole assumption or whole argument of the author becomes questionable. So let's now connect. So assumption is like number 4 that we have got here. Assumption is like a discovery, to convey the idea in a more lucid manner. I'll let you know this, that assumption you can compare or like a discovery of something. Discovery, we discover those things that already exist, that are already there. So assumption is already there. Already there means that though author has not written, yet he believes in that. While making his points, he actually has assumed them to be true. So that is like a discovery, more or less. Whereas when you make inferences or corollary, they are also based on the author's passage. However, they are like inventions. They may be like inventions. Don't undertake him as a very hard and fast, but just to convey the idea, I'm using these metaphors. Inventions are on the basis of the raw material. A scientist or a researcher invents something new. So here again, a reader has come across the paragraph where he has understood the author's thought. Based on those thoughts or points that have not been said as it is, the reader makes a kind of logical deduction. When you made this deduction in this in the earlier example, like here, nowhere it was written that water can be frozen, but it can be made because it is based on this. Similarly, nowhere it was written there that A leads to C, but we have arrived at this. So you use the raw material, which means the factual or the data or information given here, and you may deduce something new. It's not always that the thing will always be new thing. Sometimes very simple inferences are there that you get confused to. So Bhuvi asked a doubt, and now I come to that doubt. I am going to clarify this. Bhuvi, you have asked that if one of the option in assumption based question is asked and the content is straightforward mentioned in the passage. I will actually broaden your question. It's not just assumption. Let's guys include that even for an inference, if this problem arises, that the information is given in the passage and it is given in the options also. Should we take that option as the correct inference or a correct inference assumption or not? So if the same information in the passage and we come across the same information in the option, should that option be chosen as an answer to the assumption or inference question or not? That is the doubt. And for both, the answer is same. Even I can include corollary also. The answer is that if the author in the passage has said, as he said there, that A leads to B, A leads to B is said there as it is, and then in the next line he says B leads to C. The question asks you to find out a valid inference, and in one of the options you find that it's written that B leads to C. Now this cannot be the answer. Why? Because the same word to word copy, the factual repetition cannot serve as an answer to the inference or assumption. So by straightforward word that you have written, if the same thing is written, however, you need to be careful that word to word copy, when nothing is added, cannot be acceptable. It will always be wrong as an answer to an assumption question or as an answer to an inference question or as an answer to a corollary question, for all three. So a mere factual repetition is not the answer. What is the answer? And to what limit you can accept, to what extent you can go here. Do understand that word to word copy or a factual repetition is obviously not the answer, because the inference and assumption demand something which is not written there, right? And you have to come out with that, the implicit information you need to deduce, take out. Whereas if author has said something like here, the valid inference is A leads to C. Yeah, A plays some role in causing C. This is the correct answer. However, it's a very simple one because from A leads to B and then B leads to C, it is easy to comprehend. Up here, the no student should be confused that this information, encircled one, is so simple and I can connect with that. So he should. So should it be inference or assumption or not? Then the answer is that it is correct answer. Why? Because it's not word to word copy. Its logic has been applied here in right to make the correct inference or to make the correct assumptions. So sometimes the chosen option may represent a kind of simplified version, a kind of perspective explanation of the author's point, and that should not be mistaken as a word to word copy. The word to word copy means as it is. Hope that doubt is clear. So I have explained the 4 questions, right? Let's now, the time is to go to the exercise, and I'll show you some new questions. Now, only and all and these kind of questions you have already done. So we'll take you to some new type of questions. The question on your screen is passage number 3, and you are asked to find out the inference, the valid inference. A small paragraph is given. So let's take this passage. You have 2 minutes to read the passage and evaluate the options. I want each of you to read and write your correct answer. So here the passage and all the options are visible. 2 minutes. data sufficiency and validity of the logic. These two aspects you need to find out in the given option. D option is, and requirements are necessary to ensure that nobody gets hurt. So this is the extension of D option. Hunting is such a dangerous activity that state controls and requirements are necessary to ensure that nobody gets hurt. Okay. Fine. So the given time is over. I'll take you to each option. Some part of D is on the second column. Uh, First, in a certain state, hunting permits require. So all the requirements are mentioned. The data. Number one, the hunter to be at least 18 years old. Right. This first requirement given. Possess a valid driver's license. Second requirement given. Or state identification. Right. Second. And have completed a safety program within the past 5 years. Within the past 5 years, this is the third condition given here. So hunting permits have these three conditions. Now he says the hunter must also sign a legal document pledging not to consume alcohol while hunting. So he must also sign this, that he will not consume alcohol while hunting. So this is an additional information. We can say number 4 is given here. We need to infer something. It means we make a deduction, data must be there, logically it must be correct. Option A says all states have the same requirements for hunting permits. You all know it's a visible word, right? So all means all states, no state is left, but the passage talks about in a certain state, it's in a particular state. So of course A, you don't have data. It may be there, may not be there. B option says if a person last completed the safety program 6 years ago, he will have to complete the program again before he can be eligible for permit. Right? Fine. We do not find any visible error here. C says someone who is not 18 years old cannot obtain a hunting permit in this state. Someone who is not 18 years old. Passage says the hunter to be at least 18 years old. Now you have to apply your logic whether the expressions represent the same point or there's some some game, some trap. D option says hunting is such a dangerous activity that state controls and requirements are necessary to ensure that nobody gets hurt. It says a very factual kind of information it gives you. I mean, otherwise true, However, you need to find out an inference. So for the inference, the data should be there in the passage. Hunting is such a dangerous activity. Like, how do we know that hunting is a dangerous activity? Does this nature of hunting is given here? The given information gives us the detailing of the requirement for the permit instead of the very nature of hunting. From outside of the passage, we know hunting is a dangerous activity, maybe a dangerous activity. However, not on the basis of the passage. So don't be trapped by this option. This is the deadliest option, the most dangerous one. It's such a dangerous activity that state controls and requirements are necessary to avoid any kind of mishap. Right? So your option to ensure that nobody gets hurt. Okay. This objective is also not mentioned here. So dangerous activity and nobody can get help. D is not given. Though three good options we had, only weak option was A, where all states was mentioned, so it was eliminated. Coming to the B option and C option. Now you tell me A out, D out, whether A is the answer, B is the answer or D is the answer. B versus C. So you know, option C says someone who is not 18 years old cannot obtain a hunting permit in this state, who is not 18 years old. And the passage says that at least 18 years old the person should be. At least 18 years, at least means that the person should be minimum 18 years old or he could be 18 plus. But who is not 18 years old seems to suggest that only 18 is allowed. Because even an 18 plus like 19 is also not 18. So obviously according to the C statement, even he is not allowed. Whereas the original statement says at least 18 is allowed. So C is wrong. It's a word play done by the examiner here. We get to option B. This is the correct answer. Why is it correct? If a person last completed the safety program 6 years ago, he will have to complete the program again before he can be eligible for a permit. What is given in the third condition? Along with age and ID card, author says, and have completed a safety program within the past 5 years. Within the past 5 years. So of course, if he has completed the program 6 years ago, so he will have to go again for the training program. So B is the correct version and the valid inference. When you look at option B, the 6th word is not given in the passage. That's why sometimes students without thinking twice dismiss this option as if no information is there. But it is logically connected to within past 5 years. And that's why the correct inference. So in the inference questions, the challenge you face is okay, sometimes a totally new piece of information is written. Just like 6 is given here, but within 5 was given here. But the logical connectivity you need to establish. Okay. So guys, for the inference questions, what you need to be careful of, that you must have sufficient data and you must have the sufficient data in the passage for the claim chosen option, and you must have the logic and the reasoning behind that option must also be correct, right? These two conditions always cross check whenever you are writing the inference questions, when you solve the inference questions. Now I'll take you to an assumption question. But before that, I think you must try the one more question. This is passage number 4 on your screen. Improved technology and equipment often result in fewer injuries during high risk activities. such as rock climbing and scuba diving, but participant education also plays a large role. Okay, so here this passage, question number 12, passage number 4. Yes. So 2 minutes you have to read and evaluate the options. All right, so you must have read the para, and you have to choose the inference. Improved technology and equipment often result in fewer injuries. Improved technology and equipment in fewer injuries during high risk activities such as rock climbing and scuba diving. But participant education also plays an additional information, or participant education also plays, apart from technology and equipments, this also plays a large role in reducing the number of injuries sustained. Uh, Participant education means the training sustained during these activities. Fine. So the two things that can play some role are given here. Number one, number two. Now author says people who are poorly trained in these activities run a much higher risk for injury even if provided with the latest and best equipment. Right. So the training part is highlighted here. Importance of training. Option A says people who are properly trained in their activities do not sustain injuries. Who are properly trained do not sustain injuries. The passage has not said that they do not sustain, because passage has said कि improved technology and equipment are also required along with the training. And here it says who are properly trained. I mean just the training, equipment and technology, improved technology. It's not talking about. So they do not sustain injuries. We cannot say. Even if improved technology and equipment were mentioned, yet we could not have chosen this option, because do not sustain injuries, like going in a very extreme way, there is no possibility. The passage is talking about that higher risk is there, and the word risk suggests the probability. Both are possible. No injury occurs to them, or maybe no accident happens to them, or maybe some accident happens. So the risk factor is there. It means in a probable sense he's talking about, and option A is making it very hard and fast. B says the safety benefits of the latest equipment can be offset by inadequate preparation. Up you are supposed to find an option which is based on the given data, and option B is according to the last sentence. People who are poorly trained in these activities run a much higher risk of injury even if provided with latest and best equipment. It means the safety benefits of the latest equipment can be offset by inadequate preparation. This is the data is given here in the last sentence. Logically this point is valid, right, because it is representing that point, that logical deduction. C says rock climbing and scuba diving are more risky than any other activities. Now they have not been compared in the passage, so we have no data for option C. The claim made here is incorrect inference. D, people with the latest equipment often neglect proper training, and now this behavior of the people is not covered in the passage, so again there is no data support for option D. So in terms of data, option A, option C, option D, they lack it. Option B is based on the data, and whatever the option is saying is also logically correct. So that's the reason I told you that when you solve the inference question, always cross check that whether the sufficient data is there. Even if the data is sufficient, the point should also be logically correct. Okay, so that was to this inference question. Let me now take you to a couple of assumption questions. Through a question, I want to show you the difference between an assumption question and an inference question. Let me cite an example first. After that, we'll go for assumption. Already the difference I have discussed. All students who attended the session on assumption and inference, A and I, got their concepts clear. And let's say student Ramesh attended the session. So the valid inference is that Ramesh got his concepts on A and I, assumption and inference, cleared. This is the correct deduction. As per the data, since all students who attended the session on A and I got their concepts clear, and Ramesh attended the session on A and I, so of course Ramesh must have got his concepts on A and I cleared. This is a valid inference as it is deduced from the given data. Logically it makes sense because all, and then Ramesh is also a subset of that. This makes sense. Let me cite the same example with a with an alteration. So here the first sentence is as it is, all students who attended the session on ANI got their concepts cleared, and Ramesh the video recording of this session was shared with Ramesh. So the author concludes, so he must have got his concepts cleared. Right. Now, so this story says all students who attended the session on assumption and inference got their concepts clear. The video recording of this session was shared with Ramesh, so he must have got his concepts cleared. This is the conclusion the author has arrived at, right? And this conclusion is arrived at or proven by assuming something. So the assumption, valid assumption for this is that this author believes that Ramesh has watched watched the video recording of the class, right? So assumption is what? It is the author's belief, author's presupposition, which he has not written here. What he has written, that he has written only the main point that he is trying to prove. But while making that point, he has assumed something. So whenever the question of assumption is asked, you must be clear that you are going to find it for the author, not for your own self. So don't judge the assumption answer on the basis of your own, the way you deduce, the way you draw an inference from the given data. Rather, you have to look at the validity of the option, the veracity of the option on the basis of the author's point, right? What he has said or what he has proven. So Ramesh has watched the video recording is the valid assumption, and inference is Ramesh got his concepts on ANI clear. So the nature of assumption and inference with this example. Now I'll take you to some assumption examples. So here, now look at this. Passage number 3. The question is to find an assumption. Read the para. So for this author, you need to find out his supposition, what he has believed into. So assumption questions will become easier if you try to notice the point that the author is trying to prove in the paragraph. So I suppose you all have read it. We'll go to the options, but before that, because most hospitals suffer, which is most hospitals, so it's a quantifier here, so must underline, right? Most hospitals suffer a chronic undersupply of physicians. Patients must sometimes wait hours in the emergency room to see a doctor. So there is an undersupply of physicians, right? And that's why patients have to wait. Nurses should therefore perform, now the author is drawing a conclusion, should therefore perform initial examinations in hospital emergency rooms. Why? To determine which patients merit immediate treatment and which can wait until the emergency physicians have more time to see them. The author's conclusion is written and therefore is the indicator here. So his conclusion or his main point he proves on the basis of the given situation. There's an undersupply of physicians and that's why waiting time is huge. So nurses should therefore perform initial examinations in hospital. What the author has assumed while making this conclusion, options are before you. A says hospitals should expand their medical staffs. What they should expand? Their medical staffs. Okay. B says physicians cannot be trained to perform initial examinations themselves. Cannot be trained, it says. But the passage says that they do not have time. So it means B is incorrect. It's a weak option. Similarly, option A has mentioned hospitals should expand their medical staff. The medical staff is a wider and a generalized term. Author is only talking about the undersupply of physicians, not the medical staff. Because if a medical staff means not only just the doctors and nurses, but also means ward boys, also means the ambulance drivers, and then everything has been included into. So, which is again not the best option. C says emergency rooms will run more smoothly if initial examinations are performed. Sounds good. Will run more smoothly if initial examinations are performed. And we compare it with D, which says nurses are competent to judge the severity of patients' conditions. Which one is the better assumption? So you see, author has established this point that nurses should therefore perform initial examination to save the time and to set the priority for the physicians. It means the author has assumed that nurses are competent enough to do the initial examinations. So D is the assumption which is like a foundation for this conclusion. Like a foundation of a building, we cannot see assumption. Assumption is not written as we the foundation of a building is not visible. Similarly, assumption is also not written. However, the whole building rests on the foundation. So similarly, the whole conclusion or the proven point rests on the assumption. So that is the D option. It is doing that job of the foundation for the given argument. Option C, why it loses out? It says emergency rooms will run more smoothly if initial examinations are performed. Uh, According to author, yes, it will run more smoothly if initial examinations are performed. However, the author has a very specific point to make here, that nurses should perform the initial examinations. So this is the basic point, the basic assumption that he has made. They are competent. So the best option is D option. As I have already told you that tomorrow's class we will discuss the PYQs and the a little more challenging questions. So today I am only using such passages and questions which are not very difficult in terms of contemplation, in terms of the language, in terms of the thought, right? So in tomorrow's class I have saved for that, because with the questions which are easier in nature, just like the previous question you have done or any question that we have done in today's class, they are very easy to understand. So it becomes effective, for me to discuss and drive home the points, the kind of analysis of the options that need to be done, because you have already understood the passage. So, but obviously, when tomorrow we'll meet, we'll go for CSAT passage, which will be a little more solemn and serious and contemplative. Now, this passage. Yes, this passage number 5 on your screen. In response to increasing cost of producing energy. This is like a CSAT passage. Mostly they give the passage based on environment and climate change and economy. So 2 minutes for you to read the passage and evaluate the options. So you must have read, guys, you need to notice the most logical assumption you need to find out, and in exams always superlative degree is written. I can say always easily, because in logical questions they always ask find out the most logical assumption or most logical inference. It means you have to go for the best one, for which more data support is present in the passage. More data support, and you are clear about that. So what the passage is saying, what the author is trying to prove here, he says in response to the increasing cost of producing energy through combustion, traditional means such as combustion, many utility companies have begun investing in renewable source energy sources. All right. Because of this increasing cost, the pricing, the money part. Chiefly wind and solar power, these two mainly, hoping someday to rely on them completely, 100%, and thus lower energy costs. The utility companies claim that although these sources require significant initial capital investment, these renewable energy sources, they require initial capital investment, they will provide stable energy supplies at low cost. As a result, these sources will be less risky for the utilities than non-renewable sources such as gas, oil and coal, whose prices can fluctuate dramatically according to availability. So author has said that the claim made by these utility companies is that these sources will be less risky. No, these renewable energy sources, wind and solar, will be less risky and of the utilities than the other sources, non-renewable sources, and because their prices fluctuate according to availability. So here the it hinges upon the point that the prices of the non-renewable of renewable energy sources, wind and solar based energy, that will remain available, and because of this availability the price fluctuation will not happen as it happens with the non-renewable energy. Got it? So that is the point made here, that for this most valid assumption we need to find out. So A option says the public will embrace the development of wind and solar power. Maybe the public will embrace, but this is the passage does not talk about the public at all. So there is no direct and indirect connection with that, because the passage is talking about the availability of energy supply, right? So whatever options, alternatives are given to the public, of course they will go for the energy because they need energy requirement. So they will embrace, does not pose make sense here. So of course option A is out. Option B says no new deposits of gas, oil and coal will be discovered in the near future. The passage does not talk about this at all. There will be no deposits will be discovered. So A, B, weak options. C says weather patterns will remain consistent and predictable. And D says the necessary technology for conversion to wind and solar power is not more expensive than the technology needed to create energy through combustion. Remember that this price comparison of both energy is not given in the passage. It is given in the passage that initial investment is required for renewable energy sources. For wind and solar, initial investment is required. So the necessary technology for conversion to wind and solar is not more expensive. Such a specific data is not given in the passage. So again, for D option you don't have the data. Then we are left with option C, and how C is the valid assumption, most logical assumptions, because it says weather patterns will remain consistent and predictable. The passage talks about two sources of energy, wind and solar, renewable sources, right? And both are related to weather patterns. When the utility companies have made the claim that for the availability of energy will be there if they rely on renewable energy, wind and solar based energy will be available, and hence the prices will not fluctuate for them. And these two energy are related to weather condition, climatic conditions. So obviously the the utility companies have assumed that they will remain consistent and predictable. That's why it will not affect the availability, and hence the fluctuation of prices will not happen as it is happening today. So option C is the valid assumption made here, and for which you have the data support. So in a way you say see here that the assumption, the C option is something and the authors the utility company's argument hinges upon this option, that it will remain stable. Just like the previous passage, that author says that nurses should be given this responsibility. It means he assumed that nurses are competent enough to do that. So this was an assumption question. So guys, in today's class we discussed the basics of RC, and in RC part, as I said, that you need to be good at data evaluation. Language you already know. No students face much challenge here. However, the challenge is here. So for analysis ability, you need to be good in terms of reading the passage. Analysis of the passage is required, but at the same time analysis of the question and the analysis of the options, they also play a very important role. So analysis of all the three fronts. After that, you know that the doubts that you have is mostly and in today's case, I have discussed with you the concepts based doubts. Since your preparation for prelims exams is at its last leg, because 1 month is left only, so of course the concepts must be clear, and in tomorrow's class I will discuss the PYQs plus the approach based doubts. Approach based doubts like how much time should be given, which section should be done first, should I attempt all the question, or and these kind of issues related to the approach only. Concepts means the concepts of the questions, the concepts of the passage. I told you that whenever you are reading the passage, just remember one thing: CSAT RC passages while reading demand that you should focus on what the author wants to convey, what primarily he wants to prove or establish. Don't miss out. And there you will come across two types of style: either the author directly writes what they want to prove or establish, or they sometimes implicit manner, in an implied manner they write their point. And they tend to say, but they do not say it openly. Right, in 2023 paper there is also a question where author examiner asks that what does the author tend to say. It means he has not said it openly. So this is the point related to the passage. Then related to the question and options, I told you that the questions are by and large asked in CSAT paper are two types: crux, main idea based. These terminology words can be used by the examiner: crux or main idea, key idea or critical message, sums up or gist or essence. Right, it means you need to find out the main point of the passage. We have not solved this particular type of question in today's class. We'll address it in tomorrow's class. Logic based questions are many, and the whole list is given here. Then I told you that regular questions asked in CSAT paper are these from number 1 to number 5. Number 6, 7, 8 are those questions that, like number 6 was once asked, 7 and 8 are also a type of logical question, but not a regular feature in CSAT paper. So we come to the point that when you go for the evaluation of the options, right, evaluation of the option demands that you must have chosen your option. This is the third part after the questions. Options should be chosen, and keeping these two basic points on mind. Number one, whether the chosen option is the answer to the given question or not. Be careful, and that's why many students commit an error. They chose an option thinking that it is given in the passage. It may be given, however, it's not the answer to the given question. Second point is that when you choose the option, always cross check whether the sufficient data is given for this claim or not. Right, you have seen in the solved questions of today's class that some options were making sense, however sufficient data was not there. So these two are the main point when you evaluate the options. When we talk about the data is sufficient or not, so data sufficiency, I discussed with you that data sufficiency means that you need to focus on certain words generally used by the examiners. However, they may be in the passage also. Words like words that represent 0% and 100%, or the other words that are very loud, they are very over the top, kind of flashy and noticeable. तो आपको वो वर्ड्स यहाँ पे बताए, जैसे all, always, only, solely, some, most, often, never, nothing, none, these kind of words, or complete or entire or absolute. The wrong options are generally embedded with these words. One or the other word is always present, so understand their value, and that's why I mentioned the value of these words, right? What do they mean mathematically and how you should analyze them, so that you can cross check the availability of the data. After that, I took you to the logical questions and what kind of information they require, right? How those nuance differences among them, and the nitty-gritty. I discussed with you that conclusion, inference, corollary, what do they mean? So this example was used in today's class. Conclusion as the main point, proven on the basis of the whole para, and you have seen that in the assumption question, author proved the point, right? In the nurses passage, then in the other passage of utility companies. So conclusion is the main point. Then inference is the logical deduction made by the reader, by a student, and corollary is a logical deduction. Corollary is another inference that is based on the proven point of the author. right? That's the reason in mathematics we have a corollary that is based on already proven theorem by some mathematician, and our points are based on that. Here I have written the whole definition of inference, then corollary, and then assumption we discuss that it is the author's supposition. And I told you the difference between the two, right? And with the help of this particular question, so I told you that inference and corollary and logical conclusions are like are a kind of inventions that somebody is doing, and whereas assumption is a kind of discovery that's already given there in the passage. So in tomorrow's class we will discuss main idea based questions, and we'll discuss the PYQs and your approach based doubts for 2024, which is part of your strategy and which is a very, very important part, right? So guys, see you tomorrow. Thank you very much for watching.